6B. Good morning and welcome to the program. According to a report out this week, the United States is still a nation of entrepreneurs. The number of single-person businesses, or people who are self-employed, has increased to 17.5 million, up from 17 million last year, according to U.S. Census Bureau. This morning, we look at the trend towards self-employment and freelancing that is happening all over the United States. But first, let's go out on the street and talk to some people who are on the front lines. What do you do? I have three different jobs. I'm a substitute teacher. I write for a website and I volunteer at an art museum. Wow, how do you juggle all that? Well, it's not all that bad. I only teach for a couple of days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, usually, and I do the website work at home, often during the evenings. So there's not much conflict. You could call it variety. So you enjoy working in three different places? Right now, yeah, I really do. Especially with the teaching. When you are sub, um you don't get involved in the day-to-day stuff or the paperwork or the politics. You just go in and do the job and then you go home. And it's flexible. If I don't want to work, I don't have to. But if I feel that I need to work more, I ask for more teaching hours. If I had a full-time job, I think I'd get burned out and I wouldn't be able to do other work, which I really enjoy. What about health benefits? Well, I get health insurance through my wife's job, so I don't have to worry about that. Tell me about your job. I've just set up my own baking business. I make cakes for special occasions, weddings, and that sort of thing. Really? Why did you do that? Well, I had a full-time job, but I got laid off, so I decided to go out on my own. And how it is going? Well, I don't have very many expenses because I'm living and working in my parents' house, so I don't have to pay rent. It's going okay. I'm getting by. It takes a while, to get known. It's been learning experience. I've learned a lot about managing a business. What are your plans for the future? Well, I need to work on marketing, getting out there and selling myself. I'm not very good at that part of it. Ideally, I'd like to work with a partner that could do that. Maybe I'd like to have my own place someday, but right now I'm just taking it a day at a time. Back to the studio now, and if you're just joiners, the subject is a recent report that shows 17.5 million self-employed people in the United States. We're talking to the labor specialist, Jenny Huang. Welcome to the program, Jenny. Thank you. Can you tell us who these 17.5 million people are? Well, there are different types of people in this category. There are the entrepreneurs, like the young lady that you interviewed, the ones that have their own one-person business. They are the ones you usually think of when we think of self-employment. But then there are freelancers who might go to work in different places or work on a contract basis. And there are the people who are employees but who also work for themselves part-time, like the first person you spoke to. What kind of work do these people do? Well, the greatest rise in self-employment has been in professional and business service. That could include people like freelance web designers, marketing consultants, and so on. The second biggest category is construction workers. That would include carpenters, painters, electricians, and so on, who work for themselves. And why do you think self-employment is on the rise? Are we really a nation of entrepreneurs, or is there something else going on here? Well, some of it is economic. There are people who've been laid off, so they've decided to go out on their own. Another reason is the growth of software industry and the media, where they've used a lot of freelancers, writers, and programmers, and so on. There are a lot of people working in those areas now, but there's also been a change in attitudes. There are more people who want the advantages of self-employment. They're finding it preferable being able to manage their own time, for example. They want to have more control over their own schedules. Exactly. What are the downsides to self-employment? Well, a lot of people underestimate the amount of time you have to put into business side of things, especially marketing, and especially at the beginning. It's not enough to be good at something. You have to be able to sell yourself. And some people should just never go into self-employment because marketing isn't their strength. Uh-huh. The other thing is to be organized, especially with your time. You have to be able to manage your time. You need a business plan, and you really have to be very organized to be a successful freelancer. 7. Good afternoon. Today's lecture is about different languages spoken in the United States. The Modern Language Association has put together data on the numbers of speakers and the locations of the 30 most commonly spoken languages in the United States. Let me first explain how the information was gathered. The data came from U.S. Census information. In addition to the user census questions about number of family members and age, people were asked about language. If a language other than English was spoken at home, if the answer were yes, then the person were asked to name the language. You might be surprised at how many different languages were reported. 300. Yes, 300 different languages are spoken in the United States. The Modern Language Association focuses on 30 most common languages. Of course, English is the number one language. Spanish is the second most common. Chinese is the third, and the French is the fourth. Now, the Modern Language Association has put all together information in different ways. So, for example, you can look up a particular language, let's say Korean, and see how many speakers there are throughout the United States. There are almost 900,000 Korean speakers in the United States. Then you can see how that compares to the total number of speakers of languages other than English. So of the people who speak another language, 2% are Korean speakers. It is also possible to see how many Korean speakers there are in different areas. Two main areas of concentration are Southern California and Washington State. Now, another way you can look at the information is by starting the place with the entire United States, a state, a country, or a city. So, for example, looking at the state of Texas. In Texas, English is spoken at home by just over 68% of people. Of the people who speak another language, 86% speak Spanish, and is the only 1 or 2% for any of other languages. So Spanish really the predominant language other than English in Texas. Now you can then compare the information to other states. For example, looking at the state of New York. In New York, a little over 72% of people speak English at home. Of the people who speak another language, 49% speak Spanish, and then 8% speak Chinese. 6% speak Italian, and 4% speak Russian, and 4% speak French. So you can see that there are a lot of Spanish speakers in the New York, but there are also other languages spoken, more so than in Texas. Okay, so there are different ways to look at this data. Let's talk about possible way this information could be used or why is this important. I'd like to open this up for discussion. Do you have any ideas? Yes, in the front row. I think this could be important for educational purposes, so people know what kinds of classes might be needed in the schools and things like that. And I think it's important to understand the cultural makeup of the United States. Yes, definitely. Anyone else? Yes. Isn't it also important to be aware of possible language change? If one language is being used less or more over time. Yes, absolutely. Okay, we are out of time, but we are here to talk about, but we are going to talk about language change next week, so we'll discuss this more then.